With all the new geek gear coming out these days, one thing that's really starting to annoy me is the fact that cars aren't keeping up with technology. We need the 120 volt plug-in sockets, we need a USB. These little power sockets that they currently have that used to be the cigarette lighters just don't quite cut it anymore. And in this episode, Dave's going to show you how to make that happen.
Show you how I built a slick little panel that has 12 volt sockets, has 220 volt sockets, and has one 5 volt USB socket. So the first thing you're going to need is an inverter. I got this 400 watt inverter as a birthday present, so I figured I'd use this. 400 watts will run a laptop, it'll charge a cell phone, it'll run a GPS, no problem at all. I've even run a soldering iron off of mine, no problems at all. Now you can go with more wattage, but you're going to be upping the cost, you're going to be upping the heat generated, and there's going to be a lot more wear and tear on your battery and your alternator, so be aware of that. Now with most of these, all you have to do is plug it into your cigarette lighter, plug in your device into the inverter, and you're good to go. But it gets kicked around on the floor of your vehicle, it gets stepped on. If it's wintertime, you're going to get slush on it, and it just doesn't look cool. Whoa, 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 before we start anything, if you're at all uncomfortable with electricity, like Ben, because he's been struck by lightning twice, get someone who knows what they're doing to help you out. I can say from experience, it sucks to be driving down the highway and have the carpet on your car catch on fire. It wasn't something I was tinkering with, it was an electrical problem with the car, honest. I looked around the front of my truck for a good place to put my panel. This was my first choice, but I was concerned that it would block access to the back of the floor-mounted storage console. I looked at mounting it on top of the dash, but I thought it would be a little obtrusive there. I wanted it to look almost stock. I thought about using the little cubby here, but it was not big enough for what I wanted. I decided that for me, the best place was on the storage console. Now some of you may be pulling out your hair saying that's a bad spot because it's right beside the drink holders and liquid could be spilt causing a short. Good thinking, and I did weigh that in my decision-making process. I don't think we'll see any big car companies copying my panel because someone will eventually spill their coffee and short it out. I, however, am careful and willing to take the risk, and I don't drink coffee, so there. We will just have to wait and see which side of the natural selection fence I'm really on. Every vehicle is different, so I won't go into great detail about taking apart the dash. I will, however, say that whoever designed my dash probably designed the Rubik's Cube as well. A quick Google search should help you figure out how to get your dashboard apart. Lifting the console off the floor was a simple matter of a few screws.
Dave used a program called SolidWorks to design the panel. You could also do this with a free program called SketchUp or whatever graphic editor that you find yourself comfortable with. Print your template out at a 1:1 scale on regular paper. Cut the template out and give it a test fit. Now you can cut out the holes. A great way to transfer your template to materials to use a spray adhesive on paper, then stick the paper down to the aluminum. Now Dave used aluminum because it's easy to work with and he had some scrap lying around. Now you need to take any colored spray paint except maybe gray or silver and spray right over your sticker. Let it dry for a bit and peel off the sticker and you'll have a template transferred very quickly and accurately onto your material. All you have to do now is cut out anything that's black. An angle grinder with a zip disc works really fast on aluminum to cut out the outside shape. Drill holes through the black paint with a bit large enough to fit a jigsaw blade. Use a jigsaw to rough out the shapes, but keep them a little smaller than the finished size. Here's where you'll be happy you chose aluminum as a material to work with. File the shapes to their final sizes. Finally, to achieve the brushed finish, slide the panel across a sheet of medium grit sandpaper on a flat surface. Now that the panel is done, we need to tap into the electricity in the vehicle. Use good solid connections and beefy wire for this. Dave's inverter has a fuse inside of it, so he didn't require an inline one on his wiring. Check your inverter, and if for some reason you can't find a fuse, put one in. From the battery, run the wires to your firewall, avoiding any hot or rotating parts. Use cable ties if required. You should be able to find where your existing electrical wires go through, so you can avoid drilling another hole. Carefully fish the wires through and find them on the other side. Here are the 12-volt sockets. Dave tried using Bondo as an adhesive because it's strong and it dries super fast. It worked really well. Make sure you test fit before you do anything permanent though. The sockets had to be placed at a bit of an angle to fit inside the pocket of the console. Dave did some shopping online and at home improvement stores, but he couldn't find any options in cool looking plugs. He didn't want it to have it look like a household plug because then it would obviously lose its cool factor. So luckily, the plugs that were a part of the inverter snapped out and looked quite decent. They had little tabs that locked them into place. Mark and drill the mounting holes in the console. Also cut out the holes in the console for the plugs to fit through.
Now I hacked ground and cut the inverter apart. This is kind of what's left of it after everything else has been used. Pretty sure this voids the warranty too, so be prepared. On the top here was the switch. Now yours may come with a surface mounted toggle switch, which would have been really nice for me, but mine didn't, so there was actually a little circuit board, and that was part of the 5-volt plug as well, so I cut around it, the piece that held it in, and used that, mounted it up inside the console here. I used some wooden wedges and some epoxy and some double-sided tape to get everything into place. And you can see here's the 5-volt USB plug, and here's the switch to turn it on and off.
The control module wires and the AC power out wires need to be desoldered and resoldered with longer wires to make it from the inverter to the console. Here you can see the inverter. It's been fastened into place to the panel with double-sided tape. You can see the cooling fan and the wires running from the battery. Going around to the other side, you can see the extension wires that were used. The power wires are a larger gauge than the ones that were used before. The wires that went to the control module were some trailer wire to keep things neat and somewhat color-coded. You can see Dave also used labels to keep track of which wires were for what. Pretty smart, Dave! And here you can see the old holes where the plugs used to be. Here's another look at the control panel module with the USB plug. You can see the wooden wedges and the epoxy used to get it at the right angle for the panel. The existing power button would not work for this spot, so something had to be hacked together. Dave bought a dollar store calculator, smashed it apart, and took the AC or all clear button from it. He cut a hole through the console and fit everything into place. Now AC stands for alternating current. Fit the panel into place and fix it with 2 mounting screws with the washers and nuts on the back. Here's the finished console. Looks sweet. Just need to get it wired back up and in the truck. Dave used old connectors from an old car radio to make it easier to work on and keep the wires straight. Tuck all the wires inside and put the screws back in. Replace the covers over the screws and start plugging stuff in. Here's the final product. It's all looking awesome and ready to go. Since Dave was ripping things apart in his truck, he decided to run some hidden wires up to his GPS. It's easy to take off the handle and pull off the trim.
Here's where our wire is coming up. Here's where we want it to get to. So all we have to do is run the wire up like so, peel back the trim a little bit, and tuck the wire in. Voila, you've got a hidden wire there. We just assemble the trim over this. You'll never know how it got there. Okay, so the way we wired up the GPS cord to keep it all hidden was we took a 12-volt extension cord, which is cheap to buy from any hardware store or automotive store. We chopped the end off of it and we wired it directly into the existing 12-volt lines. Then we took our adapter for the GPS, we plugged it into that, put a piece of tape around it just to make sure it never comes undone, and we left that behind the dashboard and had the wire coming up. It was a straight wire, not a curly wire like this one. So the reason I did this was in case I ever upgrade my GPS and it has a different plug, I can just pull apart the dashboard a little bit, get at this, pull out the old plug, put in the new one, and I'm not cutting any wires or tapping in anything. Simple as pulling a plug, putting a new one in. Well, thanks for joining us for episode 14 of Mechanical Mashup. Now if you like what you see, you can follow Ben on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter, or even better, check us out on our Facebook fan page. Thanks a lot for coming out.